Hey there, folks. Welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And today we're going to be talking about the debut album from William Michael Morgan called Vinyl. So as I've mentioned a couple of times, country in 2016 has been overall pretty promising. Sure, the indie scene is having an absolutely fantastic year, especially on the edges of the genre, but I'd be remiss not to mention that the mainstream finally seems to be recovering from the stiff and sterile metropolitan trend that came after bro country collapsed in on itself in 2014. Sure, there are still plenty of mainstream country records that play to that more synthetic sound, but the winds are definitely changing, and the growth of huge sellers like Chris Stapleton or even reliable staples like John Party, even I don't really like that guy, they are telling the industry that an old school or neo-traditional sound might be viable on the radio again. And coming right into that mix is William Michael Morgan. Born in Mississippi, he caught up some traction with a song co-written with, yes, Sam Hunt, called I Met a Girl. Not particularly a great song or one I altogether love, felt a little bit run-of-the-mill lyrically for a love song except for that crazy shoes line, but the production definitely intrigued me, with more pedal steel to match the gentle acoustic vibe than I'd heard on a mainstream hit in a long time. Coupled with a voice that reminded me in the right way of George Strait, I was among the critics who were going into this debut album with a fair amount of skepticism. We've seen way too many upstarts get stuck towards trendy sounds or fall off the radar. Look what happened to Easton Corbin. But we also had some hope here. Given that I've never really been on board with John Party, I had some hopes that this kid could be the real deal. So maybe not at the level of an act like Cody Jinks, but I could hope, right? So I made sure to check out Vinyl. Did we get the return to neo-traditional quality that country radio has been missing for so damn long? Well, yeah, you're gonna get exactly that, but I'm not sure you're gonna get much beyond it. This, to some extent, is to be expected. Not every member of the class of '89 was a powerhouse right out of the gate, and William Michael Morgan does step onto the scene with a sort of poise and good sense that you like to see, which is why I'm ultimately gonna recommend this, and that's the thing, I want to support this album. It's well performed, the sonic palette is right up my alley, but there is definitely some room to grow and improve, which I think will be the real test with this guy if the radio is actually going to continue to accept him, which for the record, they definitely should, because I see a lot of potential with him. I want to see him grow and improve, but this is also the sort of album where there's not really a lot to say about it. If you like that sort of 90s neo-traditional country sound with electric guitars balanced out with the acoustics, a fair bit of bar piano and pedal steel with good bass presence, a little bit smoother than I would normally prefer but not sterile, this will feel familiar and very easy to digest. More of the texture is acoustic, of course, sounds pretty good, and I would always appreciate a little bit more ragged fiddle, but in terms of melodic grooves and hooks, I'll admit it is a bit of a slow burner, but it does actually get to you. And while I don't want to give this album too much praise for what it doesn't do, but there's a part of me that feels so liberated that there's no drum machines, no obvious synths or autotune, and the production actually has some organic warmth to it. Of course, a lot of this is complemented by William Michael Morgan himself. His vocal tones remind me a lot of George Strait, but there's a bit of Chris Young in there as well. That'll be very promising as he gets older. But I want to call out some of the best multi-tracking that I've heard in a country record thus far this year. It's incredibly smooth, but never to the point of actively feeling synthetic or forced. One of the main producers behind this album, Scott Hendricks, who has worked with Alan Jackson in the past, you can definitely tell his work comes through here, because it does wonders to highlight Morgan's more expressive delivery, which always feels authentic to me. And sure, you could argue this album might be a tad too gentle. There are definitely some progressions that fit a little bit closer to the smoother side of Tim McGraw, which can occasionally put me to sleep, but I'd argue this plays a lot to Morgan's benefit, as he's not really convincing playing to the more meat-headed drinking songs like People Like Me and Something to Drink About. Whereas in the more romantic tracks like I Met a Girl, the subtle lounge cadence of Spend It All on You, the gentle vibes of Lonesomeville post-breakup, it's a great fit for him. I like a lot of these tones, and a lot of this leads into the songwriting too, and the big credit that I will give to his writers for not being trendy. You can very much tell this album is playing to an older sound, and the writing is confident enough to play in that mold. It might be a little bit old-fashioned, but he owns it, with a sort of maturity that won me over pretty fast. Now, a lot of people have already highlighted I Know Who He Is, a song written about a father with Alzheimer's that might not reach the gut punch of Ed Sheeran's masterpiece, A Fire Love, but still is an album standard. That song really is gorgeously written, highlighting how this man lived instead of just his decay. But there are definitely a few other songs that deserve some attention. I know I'm a bit of a sucker for road songs with a parental connection. I still sing Alan Jackson's Drive for Daddy Jean at country karaoke fairly regularly, so of course I was on board with the advice of the closing song of Backseat Driver, but I also really liked Missing, a song about just taking off to be by yourself for a little while. And compared to when Tyler Farr did it last year with Suffer in Peace, it's far more approachable. And in Lonesomeville, it's about as good of a post-breakup song as you would otherwise always expect, and one with a writing credit from Morgan to boot, so that's some promise there. Now, that's not saying the writing is all great, and it's probably what holds me back from recommending this album more. For one, well, I can appreciate the sentiment of beer drinker and people like me. They can feel a little bit of meat-headed and pandering, and not really William Michael Morgan at his best. But the track that probably felt the most dissonant to me was Cheap Cologne. It's a song where he's catching his girl cheating, and then he leaves, but the instrumental vibe and the delivery feels a tad too relaxed and chipper to really work with the subject matter. I like the fiddle, I like the bass groove of the song, but it doesn't really totally work for me. The last nitpick, it is in some of the details. While this record does do a reasonable job setting things up, I feel like the writing could have used a little bit more meat and gravitas and drama to balance things out a little better. And some of the song structures on tracks like the title track and I Met a Girl, they're pretty basic. Functional, but there could have been more to the lyrical cadence and writing there that just doesn't really come through. But look, at the end of the day, if you're a country fan, this is an easy album to like and recommend, especially if you want to see the mainstream pivot back towards a more neo-traditional sound. And again, there is a lot that William Michael Morgan is doing right, and I'm thrilled to see him starting to pick up a real audience, especially in a year where country seems to be going in the right direction, finally. In terms of this sound, he's not beating out Mark Chestnut or Cody Jinks this year, most because of the writing, but you know what? He is on the right path, and that's why I'm giving this a light 7 out of 10. If you're a fan of neo-traditional country, you should have already gotten this album, but give it a look regardless, even if you're not so much a fan. There's a lot to like here, and there was a lot of albums that dropped on September 30th, and the fact that I'm covering this before so many others bellies how important I think this is for country right now. So definitely check this out. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. I'd like to like and subscribe, I'd be more than grateful. I got the poll up here, so what do you guys think of this album? Do you think that it actually managed to connect on a deeper level? Are you more identify with that more neo-traditional sound, or just felt it a little bit too vanilla and flat for you, as I've seen some people say? Now, just to explain why I'm covering this before so many others. Really, guys, there were so many albums that dropped yesterday that I just need a little bit more time to process them. And let's be blunt here. You don't want me just going into a Bon Iver or a Danny Brown or an Opeth or an Epica or a Nicholas Jar review without giving my full and due consideration, right? Like, I need those albums require a fair number of listens to really properly take in. So give me some time with those. I might have another album coming up as a bit of a placeholder that I want to talk about anyway before I get into the real meat of this week. Just give me a little bit of time. I want to make sure I'm doing my due diligence. Beyond that, anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, or any other albums coming out that you want me to take a look at, well, you guys, I already got a full list, so might want to hold off on that for this week. But until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.